guys, welcome back to another video of Learning Markers with me, Nikki Jackson. So here's part 2 of our blending discoveries. So last week this is what we came up with, and we're going to carry on now and do some more experiments. So I hope you enjoy it. So let's go on to do the blue one. This one was sketched out with the indigo blue very thin pencil. So what colours shall we use for this one? Now I've got some Spectrum Noirs and some Pro markers here. So let's test out these colours and see if they are the ones that we'd like to use for this. So let's do a swatch up here. That's quite a nice colour. I just grabbed some at random for this. So let's see, it's quite light. Let's see if I can go grab a better blue to go with that one. It's more of a grey. Now that one's good. Right, let's use these two. So this one's more of a purpley blue, and it is B617. Let's do a bit more of a swatch of that. That's right. Those are Copics. These are Pro markers. So this one is B617, and this one was this one. And this was G917. So let's go ahead and use these colours. I really like this colour palette. So let's go ahead and use the G917 first. Let's see how these go together with the blue very thin pencil sketch underneath. So I'm just going to colour that petal in. And then I'm going to go straight in with the other colour. The nibs are a lot finer than the Copics, I've noticed. Let's just leave that and see how it performs. And go on to the next petal. They also have a chisel tip which we could use and see how that comes out for colouring in a petal. Let's use the chisel tip on this next one. Of course it's harder to get a more accurate kind of filling in. It goes over the line a little, but that's okay. Let's go back to this one, and I'm going to try blending a little bit more on this one and see what happens. Actually, let's just stick with the same colour and just go on top while it's wet and just see what happens. You can see that it's kind of left a lighter area in the middle. And let's have a go with this one. This is different blue. Just layer with the same colour on there as well and see what happens. So we can see that on this one where we laid the colours and did it wet in wet. They've blended really nicely. They've actually blended a lot better than the Copics. So let's put an arrow here and put layered wet in wet. And that hasn't had much bleeding, so I think we just went over that a little bit. So for these ones we did wet in wet, but we tried to blend more. We put more colour in. So we layered more colour, wet in wet, and you can see it's bled around the edge. And also this one was the chisel tip. It has blended really well, but it's very fuzzy and it's bled as well around the edge. And for this one we used one colour and we layered the shading, wet in wet. Now if you're wondering what I mean by wet in wet, basically we haven't allowed the pen colour to dry in between the layers. We haven't waited, we've gone straight in when it's still wet. And I think if you layer in when it's dry, you are more likely to get a harsher line in between the colours. So we'll practice with that as well in a little bit and see what that looks like. So that was really interesting. I actually really like the blue showing through for this colour. So I guess if you're using this kind of colour palette, sketching with a blue pen would be really cool and give a really nice effect. So I'm going to go in now and put the yellow in the centre just to kind of finish it off, using the Copic for this one. You can of course mix brands when you're creating your pictures and doodles. So let's go in with the Spectrum Noir now, and let's put Pro markers on there, and let's put an arrow here and put Spectrum Noir. Each marker brand is going to behave differently, so it's really important to test them out and see what they can do really. I'm really enjoying just experimenting with these actually. It's a lot of fun. And it just gives you lots of knowledge for when you do want to start creating a proper piece of art, and you know how the things are going to work. So especially with pens, because it's harder to erase mistakes with pens, unlike acrylics where you can just paint over it. You can't really do that with markers, so it's good to practice beforehand. So I'm going to just layer the same colour. And see how that comes out. You can see that one's bled quite a bit. Same colour layered. Okay, so those are our 3 experiments. Now let's just do one more and go in, and I think I'm going to go in with the regular pencil, and I'm going to do a quick doodle, and we're just going to see, let's just do a couple of petals. I'm just going to do a couple of petals, and I'm going to layer the colours, but I'm going to do it, I'm going to allow the colours to dry in between so we can see how they work. So let's do all 3 different markers. So let's do some petals for each of them. So let's call that one Copic. We'll do a Pro marker here. And let's do the Spectrum Noirs over here. Just do some really rough petals. Okay, so let's pick a couple of Copic colours. Going back to our swatches over there at the top, I think I'm going to go for RV11 and R32. And that is these two. So let's go ahead and colour those in. So I'm going to go ahead and use the RV11 first. So I'm going to let that dry, put that there. When that's dry, then I'll go in with the next one. So let's put those aside. So while we're waiting for that to dry, let's go in and do the Spectrum Noir. So I think I'm going to go with the CR2 of Spectrum Noir. Oh, this is just one I grabbed. It's a pinky colour. So let's colour these in. I should really put the colour numbers next to it as well. It all helps for future reference. The more notes that you can make to help yourself in the future, the better. Because otherwise you'll be looking at it and saying, oh no, I really like that colour, but which one was it? And you'll just have to test them all to find out. So, CR2. Move my card down. And that one was the RV11 and the R32 when I'm done. So we're going to need another Spectrum Noir pink. So let's go for another CR colour. Let's go for... This one's more of a peachy one. This is CR1. I think the lower numbers are the darker ones in the Spectrum Noirs and the higher numbers are the lighter ones. So I'll write that down, CR1. So I'll wait for those to dry and I'll come back. And let's do a layer of the Pro markers. So we might as well use the ones that we've got out here. So I've got this antique pink and the soft peach. So it's best to use the light one first. Go in with those. Let's write these colours down. This one is 0138. And on top I'm going to be using the antique pink, and I don't think that one has a number. So let's write that down. Right, so let's go back to the Copics. That should be fairly dry now, and we'll go in with the R32 on top. Now I'm not going to try and blend it, I'm just going to lay it on top like I would like a shaded colour. So I'm just going to go around like that. Going to leave that to dry. Then I'm going to go in with the Spectrum Noir. So I want this one. Do the same. And then with the antique pink. This is probably a little bit more wetter than the others. It might blend a bit more. It's very dark. And let's see how they behave. So let's write a note to say we have layered dry. So let's see, you can see that the Copics have blended a little. The line has got softer. For the Spectrum Noirs, they've bled out a lot out of the sketch line and a harsher line as well between the colours. seems a little bit more harsher than those, but not too much. This one was a bit wetter, has bled a little, got a bit of a softer line because it's probably a little bit wetter than the others. So let's do one more experiment, and I'm going to go up here. I'm going to have to do all three in one because I'm running out of space. So let's just do those. So now let's layer them dry, but try and blend in a little bit before we stop. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. So let's go in with the Copic. Let that dry, and then Spectrum Noir. And then the Pro Marker. I have to say the Copic and the Spectrum Noir feel a lot more comfortable to work with than the Pro Marker for me. So I've just labelled what they are. Now we're going to let those dry, then I'm going to go in with a darker colour, and then I'm going to go back in with a lighter colour and just see if we can blend it a bit better using that technique. So let's go back in with the Copic. So we're going to go in with a darker colour. I'm going to go do a shadow there, and I'm going to go back in with this one and try and blend it. And I'm going to do the same with the Spectrum Noir. So I want the darker colour. And then the lighter colour. I'm just going over the area where the line is. And then the same for the Pro Marker. It's a bit too dark, a bit of a too dark a contrast, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to experiment with. So let's write dry first layer, shade, colour and blend wet with water colour. So now I know what I did for that experiment. So you can see it's blended the line a lot better. This one hasn't worked so well. It's quite patchy and not so nice. That one's blended really well, but it has bled out the sketch line. That was the Spectrum Noir. And the Copics have pretty much stayed where they are, but a tiny bit, and the line is a little bit more visible. It's a lot less visible than when we did it with the dry layers though, so that's really interesting to note. So to recap on all the blending techniques that we've tried so far, the first one was with our graphite pencil, and it was this one, and we basically we layered the colours. We did something different from each one. So I used 3 marker colours on these, and you can see it came out pretty well. I've put the pencils over the top and it looks pretty nice. So that's a really good technique. You can see it better on this one. We've got the really light one, the darker one and the mid-tone there, and they're blended pretty nice. And for the leaves we decided to layer with the same colour. So you can see that I just used that one green and then used extra layers of it on the side that will have the shading, and then I went in with some white pencil to lighten that, so that's really effective as well. Moving on to this one, we sketched out with the very thin crimson red sketch pencil, and I really like the effect of this one as well. Now for these ones we went wet in wet, and we did the lighter colour, then the shaded colour, and then the lighter colour on top, and it was very wet and it bled lots. And for that one I actually didn't go in hardly at all with the lighter colour, so it had a sort of more of a harsher line, but that still looks really nice. And again, I used the lighter hand there, and you can see that that blended quite well. Onto the blue one. This one was done with another very thin pencil. This was the indigo blue, and I also like how this turned out. So I think different coloured pencils for sketching in work really well with similar colour markers. So for this one we did the wet in wet, and you can see that I think we used the pro markers for this one, and you can see it left a little bit of a white patch in the middle, and but it blended really nice, so that was really cool. That one I used more of the markers and made it more wet for each layer, and used the darker one to blend in, and that's blended in really well. So with the pro markers that technique works. For this petal we used the chisel end of the marker, and that blended quite nice, although it doesn't have as clear effect as the previous one. This one we just used the same colour and built it up on one side for the shadow, and you can see that's left quite a patch in the middle there, and that was wet in wet as well. And I did the same with the other colour just to see the difference, and it's pretty much the same. This one again we layered the same colour, and that was Spectrum Noir, and you can see that it hasn't really built up the colour as much as it did with the Copic up here. So moving on to the other experiments that we did lower down the page, these ones. So I decided I wanted to try see what it looked like with layering dry into dry. So I laid the lighter colour down first, let it dry on all three markers. We tried out the Pro marker, the Copic and the Spectrum Noir, and then I laid down the darker colour on top and left that to dry without trying to blend at all. And you can see that one blended slightly because I think it was a bit wetter than the others. And these ones you're left with a harsher line, but depending on the look that you want to go for your illustrations, this could work really well as well, so don't discount it just because it's a stronger contrast. The Spectrum Noir as well, that didn't really blend very much either, but they still look cool. So then I decided I wanted to try and go in with the lightest colour at the end to see if I could blend the line a little bit. So we added down the three colours, let that dry, added in the shaded colour, let that dry, and then I think, or before I let that dry, I went in with the lighter colour and then let it dry. Now that worked really well. You can see it started to blend a lot more. It's more of a sort of fuzzy look, not quite as contrasty as that one. So depending on the kind of look that you're going for your illustrations, these all techniques look really cool. They've all got their benefits individually, and so just see which ones that you really want to use for your illustrations. So that's it for our experiment today. I hope you've enjoyed learning along with me. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video, and if you try this out, and let me see the pictures that you create. You can tag me with the hashtag Vintage Niki or Niki Jackson Art on Instagram and on Twitter, and yeah, send me your pictures on Vintage Niki on Twitter. So I'd love to speak to you and share your thoughts and tips as well. And I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again next week for another art video. Bye for now. So just experimenting to see what kind of effects that we can get with the different mediums. So that's pretty. Let's add a bit of highlight.